I'm excited. Now that this very strange year has gotten behind you, only strange in that you're out in the public now. That's what I mean by that. Started back at the Conscious Life Expo. You came on Fade to Black that night, and you were a little bit. You have thousands of people that are following you around, right? And so you went from that, and then you did your presentation later on that night with David Wilcock. And then this year has unfolded in front of you. You've gone out and you've done some presentations. You've done a lot of Gaia stuff. You've done a lot of public speaking and videos. And so here we are today. And I think that your feet are beneath you now. Okay? That's my opinion. I think you're a little bit more comfortable. So what I wanted to do tonight was really go deep. All right, and try to ask the questions that I've never asked of you before. And in doing that, for the audience that is here for the first time, I know this is a long intro to the show, but it needs to be said that there are people here tonight that have heard you speak before, and they're here for something new. So for them, we have that. For the others that have never heard you speak before, they're here. They've heard about you. They're here for the first time. We do need to address those folks as well, too, and get those questions answered. So I want to do a kind of a linear, chronological presentation, and then we will conclude at the end of the night with a bunch of questions that have been sent in to us. All right, you ready to go?
Let's go.
How long, I'm going to start right here. How long has the official version of the SSP, the Secret Space Program, been around?
The official version, okay. Well, there are a number of programs that are considered secret space programs. Some of them date as far back as the Germans during the 1930s and 40s. Later on, we started to make deals with different shadow groups and started to get our hands on some of this hand-me-down technology, and we started to, and also crash retrievals, and we started to engineer our own secret space program, and we started to really work on that in the late 50s and through the 60s, the Americans, that is.
Now, the information that you are going to be giving us from here on out after that answer, is this information that you were given, like, from the glass pad or from somebody off-world, or is this stuff that you have read over time?
Well, the structure of the secret space program, I had to kind of experience it over time to understand it. No one really sat down. Everything was so compartmentalized. No one sat down and said, this group, it has this mandate, etc. Now, there was a lot of information that I was given. There was a lot of downtime, and I was allowed to browse through these smart glass pads quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I did gain a lot of my information from those smart glass pads.
Was there information like when did the Nazis first start traveling into space?
Well, they first started developing their technology to where they could do, I guess, exploratory visits back in the 30s.
And was like that piece of information right there, was that glass pad information? Were you able to access Nazi information through that research?
Yes, this was mainly glass pad information, and every once in a while, if I was in a lab that we had set up, and we would call the scientists eggheads, or if we were working with engineers, sometimes we would kick back and be looking at the information and discuss it a little bit.
Oh, what? For the audience out there that doesn't know what we're talking about, what is the glass pad?
Yeah, the smart glass pad was this, it looked like a piece of just plexiglass when it wasn't activated. And when you would put it on the tip tips of all 5 of your fingers and activate it consciously with your consciousness. And the see-through plastic would go opaque on you, and then you would start to see either letters in whatever your root language is, or video. You could see video images that would be shown to you that would be like kind of turning around and looking like they were three-dimensionally coming off of the page.
And well, okay, go ahead. Right. Sorry about that.
And it would display a lot of information in a summary type way, and then below there were always footnotes you could go into for the more scientific stuff.
Man, I'm so jealous. That's that's exactly what I like to do, and especially with this kind of information. Well, okay, so the Nazis started in the 1930s, and was this a deal with the Draco at that time, or did the Vril actually kick this off?
Well, they had made some of the strides on their own. Some of their scientists had made some pretty good connections in electrogravitic propulsion. So they were already, on their way, but they were having a combination of telepathic assistance, outright assistance to where they had contact with them, and also telepathic manipulation, guiding them and manipulating them remotely throughout their space program process.
Did they have a deal with the Draco? You know what I mean? Was there...
Eventually they did. For a while, they were searching all through areas like Tibet, looking for ancient manuscripts that had actual technical schematics in them that they were also using to try to build these new wonder weapons.
And with the ability to travel to space, did they at that time have the ability to go to the moon, or were they just?
Yes, they made expeditions to the moon and to Mars, and to a local attempt to a local star system that didn't go too well. None of these really went too well for them in the beginning. They were having crashes and failures and losing people.
And how much of this did Hitler know about? And I'm asking because the societies and the research that was going on, and with the Draco, was this something that was kept away from Hitler?
It appears that he knew quite a bit, but there was a lot that some of his henchmen started to take control of, and they started running it, a lot of it beyond what he was privy to. Because he definitely, he knew all about the bases in Antarctica and South America in these cavern systems that they were building.
Right.
He was very aware of that. Some of these were joint bases, and actually we were told where we could build bases by the Draco.
Was there a reason?
Or not we, the Germans.
Yeah, right. Was there a because if he would have had, to me, a direct knowledge of the ability to, have flying saucers over Washington, D.C. with offensive weapons, it would have played out that way. But it didn't. And was that because of the Draco? Was there a reason why, or did he not know about it?
No, he knew about the weapons. They were the weaponizing the discs was a little bit more difficult than they expected. They using kinetic weapons didn't they could fire a good shot off, but then they had issues with it restabilizing. So they needed directed energy weapons, and that was something that they had under development as well at the time when the Axis, I guess, fell.
Oh, I get you. So like putting a cannon, right? When you say kinetic, like putting a cannon or something big on one of these ships and it fired, it would become unstable.
Right.
Ah, I got you. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Well, when did they end up the Nazis building the moon base? I don't want to get to Mars just yet. When did they build that moon base, and how big was it?
They built it in stages. It was not as large as it has been depicted in certain movies. The part that was above ground were a little bit larger than, I guess you would say, like shipping containers that go on these barges.
Okay.
And they were connected together and did form somewhat a swastika.
So it was really shaped like a swastika.
Yes, but in the beginning, what they were doing is they were traveling in these larger disc craft they had, and were scouting out places to build. They were finding out how unfriendly different parts of the moon can be if you don't have permission to be there. So they were making all these types of discoveries and mistakes, and in the beginning, they found some ancient buildings that they actually ended up pressurizing and using for a short period of time while they were building their bases.
So it was basically a swastika built out of shipping containers. Am I picturing this correctly?
Similar, yeah.
Right. Okay, I got you. And then when did they make it to Mars? And are we dealing with, like, is this 1940? 1941? Was this during World War II?
Yes, this was through late, like 39 through the early 40s, that they were really striking out and starting to do these expeditions. And I can't remember the name of the star. They tried to make a trip to a certain star system and ended up, I believe, losing their crew.
Interesting. With the Mars base, you describe, and I think this occurred on the moon too as well. You describe them taking the local dirt, right, the local soil, putting that in bags, right, like sandbags, building up walls, and then spraying stuff over it, and that's how they got it done.
Yeah, the small little base type things they would build on the surface were done this way. Most of it was built underground. But if you had to have a security outpost with 30, 60 operators, then they would have these huge, it's like 6-foot long sandbags filled with the local Martian dirt.
Right.
And build up the walls. And then they would come through and spray them down with this stuff that's kind of like the truck bed lining.
Right.
And then and they would do this on the inside and the outside. And on the inside, they would start to build it out, with walls and, pipes, like you would have in an RV almost.
Yeah.
And electrical systems.
It seems like Elon Musk has got it all wrong, doesn't he? Right. It only makes sense if you think about it. It's a very, very interesting way to look at it. And then,
Elon Musk, that's something they'll live in tin cans for a little while, but after that, they'll learn how to mold things out of the ground. They'll probably start bringing strange things there, like bamboo, to try to grow and start to use that material in building. There's a lot that can be done and has already been experimented with. Yeah,
totally. And what do you think he knows about Mars? Obviously, he thinks he knows a lot. But, wherever he starts to build, is it going to be away from existing stuff that is there? I mean, to keep him compartmentalized?
I would be shocked if he was not... if he did not have to submit for pre-approval areas that he would like to set up these little colonies.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I'm very excited about the privatization of space. You know what I mean? Keeping the players out of it, and we'll just see how it plays out.
Yeah, it's been heavily interfered with so far.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then following World War II, we have Operation High Jump. And what was discovered and what actually happened in High Jump?
Well, they had a lot of intel, and a lot of it was very hard to believe. Part of the intel having to do with, and William Tompkins has come forward recently with his book and his information that, has me convinced that a lot of the information I was looking at on the smart glass pad came from briefings that he sat through back in the 40s.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's uncanny.
And the discovery down there, because we have the Draco, and did the Draco show the Nazis their base in Antarctica? How did that play out? The Draco were there first, obviously.
Yes, the Draco ended up bringing the Nazis down to Antarctica at the time and showed them an area of underground caverns that they could easily, with their current technology and fabrication abilities, build out a pretty extensive base system.
Do you know how these caverns were formed?
Well, a lot of them were formed with just from volcanism and the plate tectonics. Some of these are giant rift systems from plates that have pulled apart and filled with water, or some of them have not filled with water. A lot of them are, lava tube systems that, go deep under the earth. And, the earth is more of a honeycomb than people realize. We have caverns and tunnel systems, some of them that never connected naturally, but were opened up by ancient beings that we have no idea who they were.
How big are they? What did you see when you were there under the ice?
Well, when I was under the ice, I saw the above ground. It looked like if you were to fly over a area where I guess a lot of ships come in. It was like a shipping yard, this largest area, and there were these huge electromagnetically propelled submarines that had these shells opened on them, and these cranes had rolled out on this train track and were unloading them. And, they were huge. And I saw, after we went down below the surface of the water and the craft I was in, we did then get to see these submarines traveling underwater and traveling through this rift system that travels all the way from the northwest corner of Antarctica through South America, up through Central America, and through the west coast of the United States.
Whoa, excuse me. I just coughed live on the air. Hold on. Oh, wow. I need a hit of this coffee. Very strange. It just came out of nowhere, too, as I started to speak. Why did the Dracos take the Nazis down there? Didn't they see the bad side to the Nazis? And why did they have that kind of alliance?
Well, they basically had the same type of ideology and goals. They had world conquest on their agenda, and they were both groups, the Draco and the Nazis, are very occult. So they were very similar.
Was it because there were certain elements of certainly with the Vril, maybe that there were good Germans that they were okay with? Did they understand the Nazi agenda from World War II? And do you think the Dracos would have backed off if they knew?
Well, the Draco were already negative, so they didn't care if the Nazis were positive or negative. There were other non-terrestrials that as humans, we were beginning to interface with, and this included some of these Nordic-looking groups, and they were also making contact with the Nazis, but they were making contact with a little bit more positively oriented Germans as well, such as, like the Maria Orsic and her group.
Right. Now we're going to head towards a break here in 60 seconds. So I want to ask this question because when we come back, we're going to deal with paperclip and then jump into current events. Did the Draco control the Germans, or was it the other way around? Did the Germans control the Draco?
Basically, it was an alliance. They were working together. The goal was to eventually produce a whole lot of, spaceships that they could use to go out and conquer other star systems along the Draco with. So this was it looked like a partnership on the surface, but the Draco most likely had something in the vice.
Right. So it wasn't exactly a mutually beneficial relationship, in other words.
Right.
Yeah,